Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. So today I would be covering on a topic called pellet firing. What is about pellet firing? Why it is important for us and why we have to study this thing. Actually, the government of India has laid down certain rules and regulations related to a pellet firing. Now, why there is a need to issue guidelines related to pellet firing? The basic reason is that during the months of October and November of each year, farmers in northwest India burn an estimated 30 to 40 million tons of crop waste from their paddy fields, after which is left after harvesting. Now, this double burning of, or I would say the pranali, is a major cause of smoke cloud in northwest India after Diwali. Now, this smoke cloud is creating a condition of a gas chamber in Delhi and NCR regions, which is actually responsible for a major many lung related diseases or like asthma, etc. So the government of India has looked into this and find out the reason for why this double burning is happening and what can be the alternatives for this to stop this double burning. When looking at the reasons for happening or the occurrence of this stubble burning, they found out that the primary reason for stubble burning is a reduced cost for the next crop harvesting, which the farmer find it easy. The second thing, the farmer find the stubble burning uh, as an easiest option because it reduces the turnaround time for the next crop harvesting. And the third is the lack of other alternatives. He has no way to dispose of this much amount of waste which is being generated after harvesting. So he has no other option just to clear the land by burning the residue. So thinking about all these issues, the government has instructed or discussed among the different ministries about the use of alternative or the listing out the alternatives where these crop residues can be used. So in that case, the NTPC has came out with a plan that it will allow a burning of 5% biomass in its current fuel mix in its Dadri plant as on an experimental basis to see its effect and to help control this pollution. Therefore, after successful trial run of this experiment, that or after biomass successful can be concluding of this experiment, it has been found out for coal if we blend coal not 100% but a little bit, that is 95% coal and a 5% biomass can efficiently burn in any boiler, and there would not be any significant detrimental effects to the boiler also if we allow mixing of 5% biomass in the coal mixture. Then that way the stubble burning can be controlled. So looking at it is an attractive option because there are certain advantages with the biomass burning. For according to a pollution point of view, also the government of India has mandated that the all thermal power plants now should burn at least 5 to 10% of biomass every year in uh, their boilers. So this way, it will help control the stubble burning as well as control the pollution on the other hand. Now, what are the basically advantage of biomass? How it is controlling the pollution, except the smoke which is being controlled? What are the various benefits other than that? I would be discussing on the next video. Now, in this video, I have limited myself only on the regulations which have been made by the government of India regarding the biomass firing for thermal power plants. So let's begin with the regulations. The guidelines for pellet firing is covered under the mission SMART. Now, the SMART stand for the Sustainable Agrarian Mission on use of agro residue in thermal power plant. This is a national mission on utilization of biomass. The recent guidelines have been issued on 25th October, 25th sorry 25th May 2021, which are in continuation of the guidelines issued in 2017. Now, the purpose of this regulation is to reduce the stubble firing, also to improve upon the carbon footprint of thermal power plant, at the same time providing an income source for the farmers of India. Now, what are actually covered under these regulations? Let us talk about that. Now, as per the latest regulations, we have issued by the government of India, we have approximately 750 million metric tons of agro residue which is being generated, out of which we have a surplus of 230 million metric tons of residue which can be utilized for co-firing with the co-firing in thermal power plant. Now, as per the Ministry of Power policy issued on 17 November 2017, the government has advised that all fluidized and pulverized coal units, except those having ball and tube mill, on public or private, that is, these regulations are mandatory for both government run thermal power plants also and the private run thermal power plants also, to blend 5 to 10% of biomass pellet firing in their total fuel mix. For example, if any thermal power plant is burning approximately 100 tons of coal, this is 100 tons is just an approximate figure, then out of this 100 tons of fuel which the thermal power plant is burning, 5% should include, that is 5 tons should be biomass. Now, this 5 to 10% ratio is considered after considering the technical feasibility, that is the safety aspect, as well as other technical aspects like the effect on the tubes, the condition of the ash after the using of this biomass residue, and other things. Now, in the modified guidelines which have been issued on 5th May 2021, the government has basically made certain categorizations. First, that all thermal power plants having ball mill shall on annually basis mandatorily use 5% blend of biomass. Now, these biomass pellets should be primarily made of agro residue only, and the obligation to fire 5% blend of biomass shall be 1 year from the date of issue of these guidelines. For example, these guidelines were issued on 5th May 2021. By the 5th May 2022, you may or may not blend the biomass. But after 5th May 2022, any fuel which you fire have to mandatorily contain 5% blend of biomass. If required, or because since there would not be any checking on a day-to-day basis, if required, basically this checking would be done on an annual basis. So annually, the amount of coal which you have fired or annual amount of the fuel which you have burned should contain 5% blend of biomass. Now, in addition, this obligation of 5% will increase to 7% with effect from 2 years from the date of issue of this order. Means after 1 year of the date of issue of this order, this effect will come into force, and the thermal power plant has to mandatorily burn 5% of biomass pellets which is primarily made of agroresidue, and after 2 years of this issue of order, this percentage will increase to 7%. For thermal power plants which are having ball and race mill, shall on annual basis burn 5% blend of biomass pellets. Now, what is different from in this order, and what is the difference between this guideline and the earlier guideline? For ball and race mill, the 5% blend of biomass pellet which is being used is of torrefied. That is, they are much more dense agroresidue as compared to the agroresidue which is being used in the ball mill. For more detail about the torrefied and non-torrefied, I would make a separate video on that, which would be coming in my next week. So till then, just remember that for the ball and race mill, the there is also a 5% blend of biomass pellets, but these pellets are torrefied. Also, in continuation with the ball mill, this order will come into force after 1 year of date of issue of order, and the obligation will increase to 7% 2 years from the date of issue this order. Now, for thermal power plants having ball and tube mills, shall on annual basis mandatorily use 5% blend of torrefied. Plus, these torrefied should have volatile content below 22%. These biomass pellets should have a volatile content below 22%. And this issue is to be complied within 1 year. For ball and tube mill, there is no any further provision of using 7% blend of torrefied biomass pellets for 2 years. So this thing has been missing in this order. Let's see what will happen after the 2 years. But right now, for the thermal power plant having ball and tube mill, they have to mandatorily use 5% of torrefied biomass pellets having volatile content less than 22%, because there is a risk of fire involved in the ball and tube mills. Now, since these biomass pellets have an additional cost, so, or I would say, let's talk about that thing later on. So, uh, the another guideline which has been issued by the government of India is that, or the Ministry of Power is that, generation units, for example, if a plant is under reserve shutdown or not being dispatched because it is low on merit order dispatch, oh sorry, it is its cost of generation is very high, even that plant has to co-fire co-fire the biomass pellets in their plant, in their fuel mix. Now, this guideline is, let me explain you this guideline once again. Or, for example, if my plant is under RST because of the I've been because my variable cost of generation is very high, in that case, I have been told that in my other plants which are running, I have to mandatorily fire 10% of this biomass. Means, if my one unit is not running because of its high cost of electricity, that doesn't give me exemption that I will not fire the biomass. In that case, my other plant which is running has to fire the additional 5% of biomass which is due for the plant which is under reserve shutdown. That is, again I am explaining this regulation. For example, I have two plants, plant A and plant B. Plant A, for both plants the regulations are 5%, but plant A is under reserve shutdown because of this high cost of electricity. In that case, the plant B has to mandatorily fire 10%, instead of 5%. The additional 5% came because the plant A is under reserve shutdown. So this guideline is not valid for a single plant. It is valid for the whole bunch of plants which is come under the single manufacturer. One example can be taken as the NTPC has been told that if all of your plants fire 5 lakh tons or 5 million tons of coal, then 5 million tons of coal or 5 million tons of fuel which your plants are firing, in that the biomass pellet firing should be point 25 million tons, irrespective whether your plant is running or not. But at the end of the year, the total fuel which you are firing should contain 0.25 million tons of biomass if the total fuel which is being fired is 5 million tons. Now that's been clear to you. Now, if any plant asks for exemptions or relaxation under the co-firing, then that plant can be considered on a case-to-case basis. And of, for to consider that case, there is a committee which will be headed by the chief engineer of CEA, including the representatives from NTPC, BHEL, CPRI, Ministry of Agriculture and the Mission Directorate shall examine such request and issue the exemptions or relaxation from mandatory firing of biomass as mentioned in the earlier clauses. Now, the next point covered under this regulation is that this policy for co-firing of biomass would be in force for 25 years. Means for the next 25 years, you have to follow this policy till the useful life of a thermal power plant, whichever is earlier. For example, if a plant useful life is of 10 years, then the policy would be valid for that power plant for the next 10 years only. If the useful life of a plant is suppose 30 years, still the policy would be valid for that power plant would be for 25 years only. Maximum period for which this policy is valid is for 25 years, and the minimum period will be the useful life of a thermal power plant. So whichever is earlier, that would be the considered as the basis for applicability of this policy on that thermal power plant. Plus, the government has told that, or the ministry has told that it will revise the percentage of biomass co-firing depending upon the time. It may increase the percentage of co-firing also if some new technology come, or it may reduce also if any harmful effects is observed. In addition, the government has told, or the ministry has told, that the generator has to come under the contract period of minimum 7 years to avoid any delay in awarding contracts by the generating companies. You can't leave this, or you can't exempt yourself that I can't able to do the contract. There is no any ground on exemption of non-firing of biomass because of contract. The Ministry of Power has strictly told that any contract which is related to the biomass pellet has to be of 7 years, so that there should not be any delay in awarding contracts by the generating companies every year. Also, this contract would actually build up a long-term supply chain. Plus, the contract should have a provision of uh, uh, rate variation from second year onwards, where the rates of the pallet being bought can be varied depending upon the conditions and the terms and conditions of the contract. Means you can't do a single fixed term price for the next 7 years. The fixed term price will be valid for the 1 year, and after second year, depending upon the terms and conditions, the price of the biomass pellet may be changed. Now, since this additional cost related to a biomass pellet firing, why? Because the normally 4,000 tons of sorry 1 ton of coal having a GCV of 4,000 is coming at approximately 3,000 depending upon the place the plant is located. So, but in case of pellet firing, this cost is coming for 4,000 kilocalorie GCV. 1 ton of pellet is coming approximately 6,700 to 9,000 rupees. So, if I fire 5% or 10% or 7% of biomass in my fuel mix, my ECR will go up, my energy charge rate or my variable cost will go up. So, in order to counter that thing, in order to give relief to the generation companies, the government, the ministry told that this additional cost which is being generated because of the biomass pellet firing is passed through. Means you can include it in your energy charge rate and the beneficiaries has to pay it. Plus, for the plants which have the ECR, which for the plant which whose ECR cannot be changed, that is, they have a fixed ECR for the rest of their useful life, or the some variation is only allowed, irrespective of what is the price, what is the cost of the electricity which they are generating. For them, there is a fixed ECR. Even for those plants also, if they fire biomass, or no, uh, if they fire the for the plants which are firing biomass, then the change in ECR because of the biomass firing can be claimed under the change in law provision. Now, suppose the my plants or my company is finding biomass and some other company is finding less biomass, or is claiming an exemption or relaxation because of the certain reasons. So in that case, the cost of my the variable cost of generation of my plant would be higher as compared to the other plant which is not firing or firing less biomass. So in order to give relief on that basis also, the Ministry of Power has told that this additional impact on ECR which is being generated because of the biomass pellet firing shall not be considered in deciding this merit order dispatch. Now, this merit order dispatch has, as I've earlier explained in my videos on RGMO or RRAS. So, if you are firing the biomass pellet firing, if your cost is increasing, then the additional cost which is being generated because of the biomass pellet firing will not affect your position in the merit order dispatch. Next, how it will affect the beneficiaries then? For beneficiaries or for discounts, the more you buy from generation from such co-firing plants, the more you can meet your renewable purchase obligations. Every discount has to mandatorily purchase certain generation or certain percentage of generation from renewables. Since this biomass is also considered as a renewable, in that case, the more you purchase the generation or the generation, or the more you purchase the electricity units from a generator which is firing biomass, the more you can meet your renewable purchase obligations. So these are the guidelines or the regulations which are covered under the biomass uh, revised biomass guidelines, biomass pellet firing guidelines issued by the Ministry of Power. I hope you must have got the idea which we have discussed in this video. I know this video was bit long, approximately 30 minutes, but that's the need of the hour. If you have any certain questions or examples related to any certain clarification related to the or comments related to the video, please do mention in the comment box. And thank you. And if you like the video, please press the like button and do subscribe to my channel. Till then, good night. And I would be presenting my next video on the basic part of why biomass pellet firing, why biomass is as a fuel, and then I would be covering upon the operational and the technical challenges associated with the biomass pellet firing. Till then, thank you and do subscribe to my channel.